Hello, and welcome to the UFO Radio Show. I'm your host, the station manager. Whether you're into UFOs, consciousness, the paranormal, or if you just want to wind down, kick back with a drink, and ponder some interesting stories, you're in the right place. We come to you from the misty hills above the world-famous Loch Ness, deep in the heart of the Scottish Highlands. Please hit like and subscribe if you enjoy the broadcast. Now here's what we have for you on this episode of the UFO Radio Show. Stand by. Coming up later, we examine a notorious alien abduction from the 1970s, the case of Travis Walton. After that, I'll take you through The Phenomenon, a video by renowned documentary filmmaker James Fox. First, let's get closer to home, UFO Radio's home. Let's have a quick look at the infamous Loch Ness in the Scottish Highlands. And as it's just us, I'll share with you an odd wee sighting I had there one sunny day. Most of us have heard of Loch Ness. We know it to be the home of Nessie, the Loch Ness monster. Hundreds of thousands of tourists visit the Scottish Highlands every year, and the legend of the beast is no small part of that attraction. Loch Ness is one of the few places on Earth where a legendary phenomenon is said to exist within a specific area. Granted, this specific area is 22.5 miles long, up to 1.7 miles wide, and descends to a depth of 755 feet. Containing more fresh water than in all of the lakes in England and Wales combined. Loch Ness is truly a massive body of water, but it's a specific area nonetheless. Loch Ness lies within the Great Glen, a geological fault line running from the central north of Scotland to the southwest and into northwestern Ireland. The loch cuts through countryside of staggering beauty, an area of significant historical and scientific importance. The legend of the beast is said to have started with the visit of St. Columba, an Irish Christian missionary who traveled to the village of Inverness in 565 AD. It was here that one of Columba's followers was attacked by a creature when he swam across the River Ness. Columba was said to have commanded the beast to leave his follower alone and retreat back up the river. With this, the legend of the Loch Ness Monster was born. There have been many reported sightings of the beast over hundreds of years. These increased as modern roads were built along the loch's shores to cater to 20th century business and tourist traffic. The people who visited and drove around the loch brought with them cameras and an appetite for solving mysteries. In 1934, the most famous image of Nessie was taken. The photograph is commonly known as the surgeon's photo. It was submitted to various newspapers and accredited to Robert Kenneth Wilson, a doctor from London who claimed to have taken the photo while on vacation in the area. In 1991, an elderly man named Christian Sperling admitted to having made a small-scale Nessie model that was used to create the famous surgeon's photo. For decades, this single image alone has fired the imagination of people all over the world. Although the world-famous photograph wasn't on the level, something folks here had suspected for years, people had embraced the image as an icon for a fascinating legend taken to their hearts. Both visitors and locals have regularly submitted sighting reports, photographs, and even film footage of what they have seen in the loch. Priests, police inspectors, and a range of very credible observers have seen some seriously weird stuff. Some of these reports and images have been debunked, but many are still on the books as true mysteries. A number of coordinated sonar sweeps and other scientific experiments have been carried out on the loch over the years to try and locate and identify the beast, but to no avail. Nessie continues to elude those who would pin her down. So many people, including those who have lived near the loch all their lives, have seen the beast with their own eyes and know Nessie is real, and they won't be told otherwise, fake photo or not. Most investigators are now certain that Nessie is not likely to be the long-necked aquatic dinosaur she has so often been portrayed as. But continuing reports do suggest that there is something big within the murky depths of this cold water loch that defies prosaic explanation. Some suspect that the loch and its surrounds could be experiencing a fluctuating phenomenon that results in the inexplicable visual and physical observations which continue to this day. I can tell you that when driving alongside the loch, one can't help but cast an eye onto the water's surface every single time, just in case. I have stared directly into that black water, stood in its waves, heard it splashing along the rocky shoreline at night, and it leaves you unnerved. One gets the idea that you might well be under scrutiny. It's a feeling that makes you nervously look back over your shoulder, despite that frightening thought. The thought that you might just see something looking right back at you. On June 4th, 2023, I was driving with my partner along the south side of the loch, high on the hills over the water. On this bright morning, with the sun completely behind us, we saw something on the water below. It appeared to be a white streak. It looked vaguely similar to a bit of foam one sometimes sees, having been created by rough water or water splashing against obstacles. This white streak sat still, showing no signs of changing shape or dispersing. I looked for anything that might make a reflection like this upon the water's surface, but there was nothing. The sun was behind me, and there was nothing in the sky over the loch. I took a couple of photographs to log the wider scene, then drove further down the hill toward the village for a better view. I stopped a few hundred meters down the road. I was closer to the anomaly in the water, but still high enough to be looking down upon it. The silver-white patch appeared to be either on or under the water. I grabbed a set of binoculars I keep in the glove box and held my phone's camera up to one of the eyepieces to use it as a makeshift telephoto lens. The rubber lens guard obscured some of the view, but I still managed to get some stills and even some video. The odd patch of light was roughly 1/3 of a mile away from the shore closest to me, about 3/4 of a mile from the distant shore behind it, and about 1/3 of a mile south of the Doors Beach, well in open water. Soon, a large commercial pleasure cruiser approached the disturbance. As it didn't slow, I could only assume it wasn't aware of the odd patch in the water. The boat sailed through the silver-white area. It remained the same size, shape, and density. To my eye, it also seemed like the white patch suddenly slid in the direction from which the boat came. After I took a few more photos, and the disturbance didn't seem like it was in a hurry to move, I decided to drive down into the village and park along the shore while it was hopefully still in the water. From the parking area at Doors Beach, I looked out onto the water, but could see no signs of anything unusual. I still could not see any objects in the sky, and no signs of any odd reflections or light refractions. Those who I asked hadn't seen anything unusual. It seemed there was nothing more to be done, and I went home with my photos. I have never heard a reasonable explanation for what it was that I witnessed that day. As our familiarity with the wider topic of the phenomenon increases, I think we may continue to notice stranger and stranger things in and around this world-famous body of water. Personally, I will never be surprised by anything this vast and mysterious loch has to show us. Let's go to Arizona in the 1970s for our next story. Just past midnight on November 12, 1975, an exhausted and bewildered young man staggered up to a rural payphone outside Heber, Arizona, and placed a collect call. Answering his telephone some miles away, Grant Neff's initial thought was that he was the victim of somebody's drunken prank, but moments later, he was racing in his car to the location of a nearby gas station. With his heart pounding in his chest, he found himself speeding to collect his brother-in-law, Travis Walton. Travis Walton had been missing for 5 days, despite an extensive police manhunt. His friends and co-workers were being investigated on suspicion of murder. But now, it appeared Travis Walton was very much alive. Disheveled, confused, and traumatized, but alive and with one hell of a story to tell. Let's look at one of the most talked about occurrences in the history of UFO encounters, the experience of Travis Walton. In 1975, Travis Walton was a 22-year-old forestry worker in the Apache Sitgreaves National Forest near Heber, Arizona. On November 5th of that year, he and 6 co-workers claimed to have had a terrifying encounter. Just after 6 p.m., the 7-man crew were driving back to town through the forest after a hard day's work clearing trees, when they noticed an unusually bright light ahead of them along the road. When the pickup truck drew up to the location of the light, the men were stunned to see what appeared to be a brightly illuminated 20-foot diameter metallic disc silently hovering 15 feet off the ground in a small clearing. The men stared in disbelief, trying to work out what it was they were seeing. The work team's tension increased to near panic. Travis Walton's curiosity got the better of him, and he leapt from the rear door of the vehicle, intent upon closely examining the most extraordinary thing he had ever seen. Travis's co-workers shouted to him to come back to the truck, but he was single-minded and kept moving towards the object. He took cover behind a fallen tree, a short distance away from the hovering disc. His friends watched, frozen in fear. The brightly lit craft started to emit a humming noise, and the air seemed to tingle on Travis's skin. The lighting on the craft changed, and to Travis's mind, the object seemed to be preparing to move off. He decided this was a good time to move back to the vehicle. As soon as Travis stood to run back to the truck, a bolt of intense light shot between the craft and him. Travis was struck in the chest by an arc of blue-white light and lifted many feet into the air. He was propelled backwards some 20 feet and landed on the ground in a motionless heap. Walton's fellow crew members were now panicked, having witnessed this shocking event unfold in front of their very eyes. They feared Travis had been killed, having seen the intensity and severity of the blast, which sent his body flying as if it were a rag doll. There were frantic shouts regarding either collecting Travis's crumpled body or escaping what they feared could be a similar fate. The driver, the crew's foreman, threw the truck into gear and sped off to get to safety and help. But after a few short moments, his conscience and irrational mindset took hold, and he spun the vehicle around and sped back to try to help Travis, or, as the men suspected, retrieve his body. Minutes later, the 6 men found the clearing dark and utterly abandoned. They frantically looked for their friend in a spot where they saw him thrown to the ground, but Travis and the disc were nowhere to be seen. Once convinced there was nothing more they could do in that moment, the crew raced back to town to seek help. The local sheriff was bemused by the story the highly distressed men told. He was faced with a dilemma. A team of young men, all of whom were well known to him, say they witnessed an unworldly craft hovering in the sky, which zapped their friend with a beam of light. Thinking him dead, but yet unable to find Travis, the crew drives back to the town for help. The police had a missing man, and the only explanation they were given sounded like a juvenile prank. The sheriff had no choice but to suspect the men's tale could be a desperate and panicked effort at an alibi for some dark incident with Travis Walton as a possible target and victim. It didn't sound good. Despite their doubts regarding the men's story, the police had to wait for explanations and needed to locate Travis Walton as soon as possible. As with all missing person cases, they knew time was of the essence. The sheriff dutifully organized and carried out a comprehensive search for Travis. For 3 days, teams of professionals searched on foot, utilized tracking dogs, employed 4-wheel drive vehicles, and even brought in helicopters to completely scour a 2.5-mile radius from the disappearance site. To the searchers' amazement, not a single scrap of physical evidence, nor trail of any kind, was discovered despite perfect search conditions. It was as if Travis Walton disappeared off the face of the earth. The sheriff's office and state investigators had become increasingly convinced they were faced with a serious criminal incident, quite possibly a murder, and continued preparing for such a likelihood. Despite having this possibility explained to them, the 6 loggers never wavered in their accounts. One man admitted to having a minor conflict and tussle with Travis early in the day that he disappeared, and considered himself no friend of the missing man. This witness was less cooperative than the others in terms of giving evidence and refused to take a complete polygraph examination, but still stuck with the story that all the other witnesses gave. They all swore up and down that no foul play took place. The remaining 5 witnesses agreed to individually undergo their own lie detector tests carried out by one of the state's most prominent polygraph examiners. Each of those 5 men passed their exams, showing no deception when questioned about the craft and Travis being struck by the energy bolt. The odds of 5 men lying during 5 individual polygraph examinations and all passing the exams, well, that is almost statistically beyond calculation. Now the authorities were faced with an increasingly perplexing mystery. Things weren't making sense. The 6 forest workers were preparing themselves for the ordeal of legal charges when the unexpected occurred. In the early hours of November 12th, Travis Walton reappeared outside his town. He was disheveled, disoriented, and on foot, but otherwise alive and healthy. He was collected by his brother-in-law, Grant Neff, and brought to his family's home. The next day, Travis began questioning by the authorities who were determined to get to the bottom of this event, which had attracted media attention from around the world and absorbed the efforts of emergency services for the better part of a week. Travis's unambiguous claim was that after being struck by a beam of light, he regained consciousness on board what he assumed to be the hovering disc he had observed in the forest clearing. He awoke lying on a table and realized he was being examined by diminutive beings of a decidedly non-human nature. In abject terror, Travis frantically struggled with the beings in an attempt to get away from the terrifying creatures and find a way out of the space he found himself in. The 1.5-meter tall entities offered little resistance as Travis lurched through the sparse rooms and corridors. He stumbled into what he thought to be some form of control room. He was desperate to find an exit. Nothing else, just a way out. It was here that he was confronted by a seemingly human-like figure, dressed in unfamiliar clothing and wearing what he took to be a helmet or headset. Somewhat calmed by the presence of what he assumed to be a human, Travis cautiously followed the figure and was led to another room where other similar figures waited. None of these people would answer his questions. In fact, they didn't speak at all. The beings exchanged looks amongst themselves for a moment. One of them then calmly placed some form of mask over Travis's face, and once again, Travis lost consciousness. Travis had difficulty determining the amount of time he spent in these bizarre surroundings, owing to the nature of what he felt to be the injuries or illness he was experiencing. He tells of eventually being led out of the space he had been confined to and walked into a larger facility. In this voluminous new location, he claims to have seen not only the disc he had just spent the last period of time in, but other similar craft. It appeared as if he was in some form of a hangar. In this larger facility, there was what he assumed to be another medical treatment zone. It was in this new treatment area that Travis Walton had his last conscious memory of his time among the unusual craft and their occupants. Travis's next recollection is once again returning to consciousness, but this time he was in the middle of a dark road at night. His head was reeling as he witnessed a disc-shaped craft rapidly rising above him into the night sky and vanishing. He thought he recognized the area he was now in, and started stumbling down the road towards a gasoline station he suspected to be close by. Upon arriving at the station, he made his way directly to a phone booth at the side of the building and placed a collect call to his sister's house. A short while later, his brother-in-law, Grant Neff, drove up and collected him. After spending the night at his family's home, Travis started extensive sessions of questioning in the investigations being carried out by the authorities. Beyond verbal questioning, polygraph examinations were carried out, which, after an initial inconclusive result, he later passed time and again. Evidence surrounding the extraordinary tale of Travis's disappearance, the timings, physical evidence or lack of, witness accounts, and lie detector results matched all of the men's sworn testimony. Prosaic explanations to Travis Walton's extraordinary disappearance eluded the investigators. With no evidence of deception, nor any clear motivation for deception, no charges were brought. Whatever happened to Travis Walton was a mystery, to say the least. Did the loggers concoct this incredible tale? Did a group of 7 young forestry workers from a close-knit town in rural Arizona think that they could be successful in spinning such a wildly extraordinary story? Did each man, including one who didn't even like Travis, cooperate in arranging the apparent disappearance of one of their crew under the eyes of local, state, and federal authorities without any motivation or even a reasonably believable explanation? Why would the men stick to their stories and face certain ridicule and suspicion? During Travis's absence, the witnesses had been told that they were at serious risk of charges in either the disappearance of Travis Walton, including the possibility of the suspicion of murder, or in the wasting of statewide authorities' time and resources in carrying out a hoax. That's a lot of serious consequences to face for a laugh. If the men were telling the truth, and according to their polygraph tests they were, could they all have been completely fooled by some other person's amateur prank? Could they have been the victims of a more sophisticated and organized operation to deceive them and the authorities? If some other party carried out the events, to what possible end? Who would have the resources and confidence to carry out such a complex hoax that left no evidence? What motivation could possibly be worth this much effort and risk on anyone's part? As of this recording, Travis Walton is still talking about his experience, answering questions, and discussing his thoughts on the possible motivations of the purported non-humans. He has deeply considered and reviewed his recollections of his unparalleled experience in tremendous detail, and has a great deal to say about the events. We have only given you an overview of the incident. We urge you to listen to Travis telling his own story in staggering detail via the links provided in the description below. Travis Walton is a man who claims to have experienced some of the most extraordinary events in UFO history. We believe he's a man well worth listening to. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. It really does help. Films play an important role in modern UFO study. Let's take a look at one now. When I decided to do a film review for the UFO Radio Show, my first choice of movie was a no-brainer. The Phenomenon by James Fox was top of my list. In my opinion, James has never made a bad film. Rest assured, we'll go through more of his projects in the future. My thoughts on choosing a film for our first review were simple. What film describes not only reputable classic sightings, but also gives a true sense of scale and diversity of the current, wider UFO phenomenon? It should give the viewer a clear picture of how grandfathered in the UFO subject is within government, intelligence services, and the military. I'd like to see both the subject of UFOs and those who have experienced them treated with the maturity and the respect they deserve. The Phenomenon is that film. The The movie begins with an interview of Colonel William T. Coleman, a World War II pilot and former public spokesman for Project Blue Book. Colonel Coleman recounts piloting his Mitchell B-25 attack bomber in Alabama during 1955 when he encountered a large metallic disc in front of his aircraft. Nothing seemed normal about this object, and he wanted to take a closer look. He pursued the wingless, exhaustless, and windowless craft at speeds in excess of 300 miles per hour for 9 minutes at an altitude described as just over the treetops. Colonel Coleman's description and the footage of the aircraft in flight brings the entire scene to life with goosebump-raising effectiveness. Wow. James is well known for his request of those he interviews to put me there. He imagines the impact of their experience and wills those moments onto the screen. James manages to put us there as well. He introduces the viewer to a vast array of important figures in UFO UAP history and helps build a solid and informed picture in the viewer's mind as to the scope and impact of this 80-plus-year-old topic. Fox covers incidents like that of Kenneth Arnold, who is credited with the first publicized UFO encounter. This took place near Mount Rainier in Washington state, and the experience helped coin the term flying saucer. We meet the godfather of modern UFO research and living legend, Jacques Vallée, as he examines possible non-human materials, along with Nobel Prize nominee Dr. Gary Nolan, professor of microbiology and immunology at Stanford University. James Fox describes the phenomenon's obsession with all matters nuclear. The incidents highlighted include some frankly shocking occurrences at military bases and deep within ballistic missile silos. This stuff will make you sweat just hearing about it. The film introduces us to a wide range of government officials who have helped push our knowledge of the UFO mystery forward and who are determined to get even more of the truth out to the public. For many, highlights include the stories of 2 UFO encounters at 2 schools. One event took place at West Hall High School in Melbourne, Australia, in April of 1966, with over 150 witnesses. 150. The other event took place at Ariel School outside Rua, Zimbabwe, in September 1994. A number of UFOs landed in front of 62 pupils. A small number of those children experienced very close, face-to-face encounters with the craft's occupants. If you want to hear more of these staggering and often moving stories, The Phenomenon is the next film you should be watching. I can't say enough about this production. If you want a great overview of the solid basics of modern ufology, presented with style, strong visuals, amazing interviews, tight narration, and sharp editing, then The Phenomenon by James Fox is certainly a film made just for you. And that's all we have for now. This is the station manager asking you to join us again soon for another episode of the UFO Radio Show.